What do much lower profits at Rocket Mortgage mean for a city that has so come to rely on the downtown powerhouse? Today is Sunday, August 21st, 2022, and this is Flashpoint. Hi there, and welcome to Flashpoint. Election Day is still off in the distance, but things happening right now are going to be key to what happens when the midterm ballots are tallied on November 8th. This coming Saturday, Republicans will gather for their nominating convention. Some are expecting that to be a rather volatile affair, given the divides that currently exist in the party. Others believe those divides will dissolve once the Republican slate is final. I guess we'll see. But the other matter that keeps shaking the House and perhaps reshuffling the deck is abortion. On Friday, an Oakland County judge ruled that abortion will remain available in Michigan until either voters or the state Supreme Court get their say. And then there's the matter of the proposed amendment. We've expected that Michiganders will have their say on the matter, but we've got a fight that has developed over the language in the petitions and the formatting of the ballot initiative that critics say should push the question right off the ballot. We're going to talk about that coming up this morning. We also need to put a closer focus on something that has been troubling to Detroit business backers, especially those who've watched so much growth in the downtown hub come via the energy and money at Dan Gilbert's rocket companies. This month, they posted a $60 million profit for the second quarter. Might be fine for most, but that's a more than 90% drop from the previous year. And it's a good time to take stock of Detroit business and what higher interest rates might do to a city that is now very reliant on the mortgage business. We'll talk about that too today on Flashpoint. All right, we're going to start this morning with abortion in Michigan. On Friday, Judge Jacob Cunningham kept the injunction against the 1931 prohibition against abortion in place. In other words, abortion remains legal for now. But there's also a fight over petition language, or more particularly, the formatting of the petition language. And after watching 5 gubernatorial candidates knocked out of the race due to bad petitions, perhaps no one should take anything petition-related for granted. Let's talk about it with John Bursch. He's the chief counsel for the Alliance Defending Freedom, and Darcy McConnell, the spokesperson for Reproductive Freedom for All. I want to thank you both for joining me. As I've said before on the program, I have no intention of hosting a debate on abortion because no one in America is changing their mind or position on abortion based on a TV conversation they've heard. But these legal matters and how we move forward, that's a very different matter. And for starters, let me let you both weigh in on the judge's decision this past Friday. John, first, he kind of seemed to have he was pretty harsh, I thought, with those that were trying to bring suit against the injunction.
Well, the person who brought the suit was Governor Whitmer, who is supposed to be upholding and defending Michigan laws, but instead is attacking them. But he did attack the prosecutors. And the reason that he did that is because he didn't recognize the other interests at stake. The U.S. Supreme Court in its Dobbs decision was very clear that one of the major problems with abortion decisions over the last 49 years is that they fail to take account for the interest of the unborn human baby, that there is another life at stake here beside the mothers. And Judge Cunningham repeated that mistake that the U.S. Supreme Court condemned. He didn't say a single thing about unborn human life anywhere in his opinion. And as a result of that, he made a number of constitutional errors. And they're all connected to his failure to recognize the second fundamental right, that of the baby.
I went into Friday morning assuming that no matter which way the decision went, we were headed for appeals. You expect then those to be the grounds for appeals coming?
I expect that to be one ground for appeal, but okay. The most basic ground for appeal is that he just made up a right to abortion that doesn't appear anywhere in Michigan's Constitution. You can look at the text, you won't see anything about abortion. It was passed 30 years after Michigan's 1931 pro-life law, and not a single person suggested the Constitution would be overriding that law. And the dangerous thing is that when judges make up constitutional rights, you may like them today, but you may be really unhappy with them tomorrow. You have to leave it to the democratic process. And the ballot initiative is the appropriate way to deal with that, not through a judge's unlawful ruling.
I'm going to assume Darcy has a different take here. Darcy, this went the way that your side wanted it to.
Well, first, thanks for having me on. I just want to take a step back and just frame it in terms of why we're here in the first place. And that's because the Supreme Court in June, stripped away Roe v. Wade, something that had been in place for decades. And what we're talking about now, when they kicked it back to the states, is the possibility of reverting to an archaic law from 1931 that criminalizes abortion. And so the reason that we're even having this discussion in part is because of what took place earlier in the year. I think it's important to we're focused on the ballot initiative, so I'm not going to get too in deep with the court rulings, except to note that the judge said, he also called the law from 31 archaic and talked about the chilling effect it would have on childbearing individuals as well as medical professionals. And so that's really what we're focused on, is ensuring that what Roe v. Wade took away, that we restore for Michiganders.
Well, let's start digging in then to this ballot initiative. And Darcy, I want to start with you and your reaction to, we've watched these words that are all mushed together. It was as if the space bar got broken. We've got a formatting problem here with the ballot language. And as I mentioned off the top of the program, given the persnicketyness that we all got into and that a lot of Democrats demanded as we watched Republican candidates getting kicked off the ballot for petition problems, is not a great time to have a problem with the language on the ballot. On the petition language, is it?
Well, I think it's interesting that Mr. Birch at the beginning talked about things that have been made up. And this is a made up issue that the opposition is trying to use to create confusion and fear among Michiganders. First, let me remind you that more than 730,000 Michiganders read, signed, and understood the petition. The second thing that's really important to point out is that what's before the Board of Canvassers now is whether we met the threshold for signatures. And we not only broke a record, but we superseded it by, several 100,000. There's no challenge of the number of signatures, but that's the only issue that the Board of Canvassers is charged with addressing. So any other sort of framing that the opposition is trying to do is really a distraction and fear mongering. And that's really kind of their approach all along. They're not dealing with the substantive thing that the Board of Canvassers has to address. They have to address whether we met the threshold. And I might note that did not challenge whether we met the threshold. That
has not been challenged. But John, let me let you weigh in here. This does seem I can't remember, garbled something. I can't remember what it was, what it's been referred to. This gobbledygook that we're seeing on the petition. Is Darcy right, though? People understood what they were signing, and that was what was important here.
Absolutely not. It's not fear-mongering to say that they didn't comply with the basics of English grammar and spacing when they put a petition in front of people. And to say that people understood the language is a gross exaggeration. You can go to the Reproductive Freedom for All website, and you won't even find the language of the proposal. Why is that? Because it is so extreme, more than any other state in the country, that almost no one would support it if they knew what it actually said. What the words say is that you've got the unlimited fundamental right to an abortion without any age limits. So minors can get abortions without consent, without even the notification of their parents. It defines reproductive rights to include sterilization. So your child could also have a transgender sterilization. I gotta finish my point. They interrupt because they don't want to admit what's actually in the language. It prohibits medical malpractice lawsuits against abortionists who maim and kill innocent women in the abortion procedure. And it takes away virtually any ability for the state to regulate after viability unless it has to do with the health of the mother. It doesn't allow the state to protect the health of the unborn child, which Ms. McConnell refuses to acknowledge, that there's a baby involved here. This is not just about one body, it's about two.
Yeah, hang on a second. Darcy, just trust me that I will make sure that everybody gets equal time, I promise.
I understand.
John, hang on just a second, though, Darcy.
People just,
I know, but hang on a second. Because, John, I'd like to get back to...
Me too.
John, before we dismiss the formatting issue, John, we have seen formatting problems come up in court before, 10 years ago. We've seen this happen, and generally the courts go with sort of the logic of what it was rather than a problem with the way that something got printed or formatted on the ballot. Do you expect that you really have a legitimate shot at winning on the formatting issue?
Just to be clear, I'm not actually bringing the formatting issue. There are other lawyers who are doing that. I'm just a legal commentator on that issue. But the courts do take seriously the requirement that every jot and tittle of a proposed amendment to the Michigan Constitution be correct, or otherwise it doesn't get on the ballot. In the past, we've had font problems, we've had misspelling problems, we've had all kinds of other technical issues, including technical issues involving candidates as well as issues. And the courts have been pretty consistent about this. They say that if you you want to get something ensconced in Michigan's Constitution, which is a serious business, then you need to be serious about how you put the language together, and that hasn't been done here.
Oh, I haven't been able to find one where the formatting knocked anything off the ballot. But let me now let Darcy weigh into the substance of what you just said. And this is something, Darcy, that a lot of people have questions about. Many people probably signed that petition believing that they were trying to keep Roe versus Wade in place. This amendment goes well beyond Roe versus Wade, doesn't it?
No, that unfortunately, that is the misinformation, the say anything approach that Birch and others are taking to try to mislead. Roe v. Wade was overturned in the earlier part of this year. What this proposal, what this measure would do is restore the rights that were lost under Roe v. Wade. All of the sort of, again, misinformation, hyperbolic claims that Mr. Birch and others are making are not what this proposal does. And it restores the rights that were lost. It restores the concept that the decision is between, women and their doctors. It does not do the things that he is claiming that it does.
Ms. McConnell, where's the age limit?
I thought you were going to let me talk.
Hang on a sec, John. I'll get right to you.
There's nothing in there that says it takes, parents can still be involved in medical decisions with their children. There's nothing in the proposal that does that. I mean, it sounds good. It sounds good to scare people about this, but it doesn't really talk about what it actually does.
All right,
we
John.
are talking about right now reverting to an archaic law that criminalizes abortion from 1931. And what we want to do now is just make sure that we have those protections in place for women to have control of their bodies without the interference of folks beyond their medical professionals.
John, go ahead.
Well, if it was really as simple as just codifying Roe, this could have been a much shorter proposal. There's a reason that the proposal talks about a fundamental right for every person and doesn't have any age limits whatsoever, supervening any other laws that we have. There's a reason that it says the state can only regulate after viability if it has to do with the health of the mother. In other words, the life of the child that's at stake at 8-9 months gestation is of no interest whatsoever to reproductive freedom for all. There's a reason that they say specifically that the state shall take no actions against anyone who assists in providing an abortion. What that does is it means that even back alley abortions could not be criminally prosecuted because the person performing the abortion could not have state action taken against them. Yeah. I encourage people not to take my word for it, not to take Darcy's word for it, but to go find the language. You won't find it on their website, but you can find it on Ballotpedia and other websites, and actually read the language for yourself. And what you'll find is an open-ended, unlimited right to abortion that more than 90% of Michiganders would disagree with if they knew what it actually said. But you're not going to hear that from those who are proposing the ballot initiative. You're not going to see it in their 100-word summary. You will only get that by reading the words. And I encourage you to do that and then make up your own mind what they say.
Darcy, I've only got about,
first of all, the ballot
Darcy, I've only got about 30 seconds left.
We're happy. I'm sorry, Devin.
Yes, I've only got about 30 seconds left. The idea of Roe versus Wade was one that was built on viability of the fetus. That seems missing from the language as I read it in this current amendment.
Again, we're trying to restore the rights that were lost under Roe v. Wade, and there's guidance that comes from the original Roe v. Wade ruling as it relates to that.
Yes, but this amendment overwrites all of the limits in Roe, including viability.
John, I wish you would
read it.
Come on, John. But the voters are smarter than that. The people are smarter than that. You are just simply throwing out hypotheticals and not reality. And that's
Darcy, that's not true.
People deserve better.
I'm a legal scholar who's read the language.
They deserve better than that.
Friends,
they deserve to know what the language says, Darcy.
I got to get to a break.
And you should tell the truth about it.
I will suggest people go read the language, but you will have to add the spaces yourself. Darcy and John, I really appreciate the time. It's a terribly serious and important issue, and I know we'll be discussing it further as we head toward Election Day. Thank you both. Back with more on Flashpoint on Local 4 right after this.
Experience the beauty at DeBuck's Sunflower Festival, voted one of the most beautiful sunflower farms in the country with over 2 million blooms. You don't want to miss DeBuck's Sunflower Festival. Get your tickets now at DeBuckSunflowerFarm.com.
In order to deal with the problems of today, we must be more innovative.
There's obviously better solutions out there that we need to start exploring.
Rents are going up and up and up and up.
Great Florida REIT is under attack.
When great value is out, it's a problem.
Solutionaries, the creative thinkers and doers working to make the world a better place. Subscribe at youtube.com/solutionaries.
Experience the beauty at DeBuck Sunflower Festival, voted one of the most beautiful sunflower farms in the country with over 2 million blooms. You don't want to miss DeBuck Sunflower Festival. Get your tickets now at DeBuckSunflowerFarm.com.
Ladies, how about a career that'll take you to new heights, literally?
And the point of today wasn't just to take the students on a plane ride, it was to put the plane in their hands.
The big demand for female pilots in Metro Detroit. Plus, what is jackhammer parenting? The extreme behavior and the negative impact it could have on a child's personal life, schooling, and sports. So wake up with us Monday on Local 4, then streaming at 7 on Local 4 Plus.
All right, welcome back. We've been so busy with politics of late, we've not stopped to take stock of the business climate in Detroit recently. And given the supply chain issues, a historically tight hiring market, and of course, extremely high inflation, it's a fraught time. And then came news that Dan Gilbert's mortgage empire was perhaps, not surprisingly, struggling to be as profitable as we've come to expect, thanks to higher interest rates and a cooling housing market. Let's talk about all of that and more with Sandy Barua, CEO of the Detroit Regional Chamber. Kevin Johnson is here. He's the CEO of the Detroit Economic Development Growth Corporation, and Chad Livengood, the politics editor and columnist for the Detroit News. Gang, thanks very much. Am I reading too much or worrying too much when I look, Sandy, at Dan Gilbert? First off, fighting for $60 million from the council, which I'm thinking, doesn't he have that in his couch? But got it. And then that turns out to be the amount of profit they had in the second quarter, but 94% difference of what it was a year ago. Is that a worry?
No, and here's why. So in God we trust, all else bring data, right?
Yeah.
Rocket Mortgage, based on the publicly available data, is doing better today than they were pre-pandemic. Everyone is comparing the numbers of what's happening right now compared to their peak during the height of the pandemic, when everyone was refinancing their mortgage, when everyone decided that they wanted to move from a 1,200 square foot house to a 5,000 square foot house, right? Obviously that is cooled, right? I mean, you know, home sales are down 20% year over year. That is natural, right? But the home market is going to rebound, and we're already seeing prices start to moderate. That's going to allow more people to come back in. Is it going to happen tomorrow? No. But the fact that publicly, the publicly available data shows that Rocket Mortgage is doing as well as they were in 2019, and we thought things were pretty good in 2019.
Yeah, we did.
So let's take this all with a grain of salt.
It's interesting, Kevin, because we've talked forever about Detroit really needing to diversify. Yeah. And we diversify, and now the mortgage business is a big part of sort of the Detroit portfolio, right about the time that inflation and interest rates start running amok.
Yeah, and I think that the importance of the diversification, I'm just thinking, what would it be like if we didn't diversify the economy? You know, you kind of reverse engineer your question, and we would be in a really, really hard position. But I have a lot of faith and confidence in Rocket Mortgage. I have a lot of faith and confidence in Dan and his team. This is not the first time. It won't be the last that they have to make some modifications and adjustments to how they do business. But the fundamentals are solid. And that's why I think I echo Sandy's position there. The fundamentals are solid. Stick to them. The market's going to moderate, and things will balance themselves out, and they'll be in a greater position going into the recovery.
Well, then, Chad, let's broaden this out and start talking about the overall business climate, not just in Detroit, certainly, but Michigan. There's so many unusual challenges that remain. Office space now, and whether or not people are going to come back to work in person. Just a million wrinkles to this. I'll let you each give me your thumbnail of where you think the business climate is right now.
Yeah, well, just to touch on diversifying, Dan Gilbert's company is trying to diversify. When they went public in August of 2020, they portrayed this to Wall Street. We're not a mortgage company. We're a financial tech company. Yeah. And we're fintech, as the term they like to use. So you're going to see a lot more of that. Rocket loans, where you can just go get a car loan, or cash to basically pay down some debt.
If you can find a car to buy.
If you can find a car to buy, yeah. But there's going to be more of that type of diversifying. They've already gotten into a business where they're loaning people money for putting solar installations on their roofs and such. So they're getting into different types of money management type services, so that they're not so dependent upon a always rising housing market. But sort of more broadly,
that seems really wise. By
yes,
but
more
yes,
broadly downtown.
For the moment.
Dan Gilbert is, he entered the pandemic with 4 million square feet of office space in downtown Detroit, and he's building the second tallest building in the city. The first tallest building in the city is absolutely vacant. And the Renaissance Center is a ghost town because General Motors is still operating remotely with most of their headquarter team is working from their home or wherever on a daily basis. And that's 4,000 people who aren't filling those big, huge monolithic towers on the riverfront of Detroit every day. And that really does affect the city long term in the income tax collections. I mean, the calculations that Detroit made to get a bankruptcy 9 years ago are completely different now because of the pandemic, because of work from home becoming more of a permanent nature. And so we as a city have to figure out how we're going to pivot and come up with an income tax or tax stream that will keep this city from falling back into insolvency.
Talk about that, Kevin, because we're all also watching what's going on at Corktown, and what is that except building really nice office space?
Well, I think there are still some real levels of confidence that there will be this kind of slow kind of coming back into those areas downtown, even Renton, and what Dan and his team are doing at on the Hudson site. So we just, for an example, we talked about Major L and the 500-person operation coming to the office. They want their people in the office. So you might see this kind of hybrid model still kind of exist as these office spaces begin to kind of reform and retransform themselves into places where you even hotel or touch down. And I think that's what we're going to see. But there is still a need for human interaction, getting from behind the camera. You can't build culture behind the camera. You have to get out and interact with one another. So I think that the industries are beginning to kind of see how can we play this and still utilize the space that we have.
Sandy, I believe that strongly in fact, I'm so glad that we're all here looking at each other, talking in person, but I talk to a lot of young people who really want to find a remote job.
Yeah. And that is going to last as long as they have the opportunity to do that. And listen, I mean, why not, right?
Yeah.
So several things. One, if you're trying to shop for commercial Class A office space in Detroit, you'll find that there is no negotiating in price, right? I mean, the confidence level, to Kevin's point, is incredibly high that these buildings are going to be filled. Now, they're going to be filled in a different way than they were pre-pandemic. I mean, so like even an organization like ours, we're shy of 100 people, right? We're still going to need about the same space we have. We're just going to utilize it very, very differently, right? I think lots of businesses are in that same boat. Also, once you see, obviously, we're looking at, anticipating a recession is a little bit like forecasting rain. If you say it every day, eventually one day you're going to be right. So eventually we're going to have an economic slowdown. Job opportunities are going to be a little bit more tight, right? And then that's going to put employers back in a little bit more of the driver's seat. They can't be oblivious to what's happening with young people, but young people are going to eventually learn that culture is important. The ability to learn and get mentored by peers and senior people. To me, the see and be seen aspect. These are all important elements, and we have to remember we're still in the pandemic. I mean, are we masking up? Are we doing Flashpoint by Zoom? No, but we are still in the pandemic, and how this is going to unfold, still don't know yet.
I've only got about 30 seconds left, but weigh in on this. Is a challenge for a city to try and sort of maneuver its way through all of this new world, which we haven't seen before.
It is. It's a challenge also for Michigan in general, just the way we have built out our cities, built out our suburbs, and where we congregate and concentrate people is more challenging. We're a more spread out society, particularly here in Southeast Michigan. And so how we rethink the use of buildings and such, I think is going to be a big challenge going forward.
I'm still stuck in the same old model that I have to get to a commercial break, I'm afraid. But guys, thanks very much for the conversation. We'll wrap things up for Flashpoint.